Good morning, good morning. So this is what my brother made for me, because he is a lovely person. This is my conservative Christian brother made these beautiful fruits and salted broccoli. Absolutely delicious, huh? So I just had these raspberries. They were absolutely beautiful. Now I'm gonna try the strawberry. Absolutely beautiful. We have our beautiful friends on board. Hello, Linus and Rhonda and Elle Brooks, welcome. It's beautiful, huh? And this stuff is amazingly good. I can feel it creeping into my skin and giving me back about 50 years of life as we speak. Salted broccoli after having a strawberry, after having a raspberry, together, unbelievable. Hello, Rob. And yet, in Western society, we like to resort to chips. And these taste so much better. Oh, just dropped the strawberry. I'm going to have to clean the table. Great. Beautiful. So as you can see, and here is the view. This is the home to which I am exiled. Exiled isn't necessarily, it's not all bad. We think of my brothers and sisters suffering in the Middle East, eating like a king. I try to. You got to do something like a king. Water view. It is very pretty. So firstly, I want to say a big thank you to all of our pre-orders of the book. We're up to $900 out of the 15,000, and it's only been like 2 or 3 weeks, which is insane. Good morning, everybody. I love seeing all of you back. It's absolutely beautiful. This is my brother, a sweetie. Liran is here too. This is great. Oh, these are too good. Hello, Governor. I have to say the broccoli sticks with sea salt, tiny bit of water. You never ever want chips. Seriously. It's amazing. You feel like you've just had all these packets of chips, but you don't have any of the bad side. You feel energized. You feel like, can you believe I'm almost 40? It's not even raw. Yeah, raw. Oh. You just get all these nutrients and it recharges you. And the thing about eating, even though it's sustenance, it's also poison. Because the more you eat, the faster you age. So what you want is to find the food that provides you the most amount of nutrients for the least amount of input. And so therefore you get all the nutrients without aging as quickly. And that's why, touch wood, I don't know if it's genetics or if it's that or a combination. Yeah, it's an amazing taste. Nutrient dense, that's the one, exactly, nutrient dense, that's exactly right. That density, I think, is the balance, that's where it is. So touch wood, fingers crossed, you know, it's a great feeling. I mean, I feel better than I did at 21. You reckon 80% genetics? Yeah. I was afraid you might say that. Because I look at my grandfather who's 80 and he looks like he's 50. So we have 61 live viewers at the moment. And that has never happened. We've broken a new record. Yeah. That must be. 69, 70. What am I eating? Oh, let me show you. Here it is. So, broccoli, bit of water and salt. We have here the strawberries. And because I'm not a... It's hilarious, isn't it? I actually ate all of the raspberries. I'm really sorry to my brother who made them for me. The food is very photogenic, that's right. It was so sweet of him. You know, and my brother's like a hard-ass conservative. You know, big ex-military style guy. So when he, you know, he's not there and I come in the morning and I see that he left it there for me. What a sweetie. Now I just want to grab him. But he's so big, but I see him as a baby still, you know? Does anyone have that in their family? It's amazing that we have 85 live people watching us talk about breakfast. Amazing. My bro knows me. He knows that I'm a radical lefty. So I always experiment with everything. And me becoming Muslim for 3 years is not the worst. There is stuff I will not share with you live. He loves me anyway. One of the beauties of the conservative people. They're very forgiving. So you guys obviously saw the peace rally. What I call the futile peace rally. So I'm coining a new term called civ shift. And civ shift has happened throughout history. But before I get to that, full-on Maoist. No, in all things that are sins against God, I have dealt. Where was the rally? Good question. I would go to Mike Cernovich's podcast and look it up. DC, there you go. Amazing stuff. Especially, I tell you which parts are the best. This part here, I don't know if that's the stem or what that is, but you soak that in water, pull it out, put some sea salt on it. Absolutely phenomenal. You wake up, I just feel like I'm the king of the world. Touch wood. I could, honestly, I've said this before, but I could take down my 21-year-old self easily. I know he's not here to back up that claim. He's now dead, long gone. Long gone. These strawberries are just unbelievable. And then after that, to top it off for dessert, you have a bit of cranberry juice. Cernovich versus Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer, please. The thing about Richard Spencer is that you actually need maniacs like that. I love that. Love raw broccoli. Fried broccoli is also nice. Wouldn't be really healthy. No, it's not. And you feel gross afterwards. That's the thing. So what's interesting is that when we spoke about the fruit, we had more viewers. Now we're talking about politics. All the viewers just went, woo! It's good to know that humans are more interested in fruit and vegetables than politics. That's actually not a bad thing. Hey, we have Christoph Gracia. Hola. ¿Cómo estás? Hombre. The best combination. You're getting the sweet and you're getting the savory at the same time. And it messes with your head. An air fryer. Okay. Air fryer, the way to go. You've got a scope on that. So, civ shift. Civ shift is civilizational shift. Now, the descendants of... I keep going too quickly. I want to say a massive thank you to my first Patreon subscriber. And I know it's only $1 a month, but what it does is that because now I'm getting way too many messages to actually answer everyone equally, and I feel so bad about that, that I thought I'll set this up. And then that way... Patreon has, and I did $1 a month, which is like the cheapest thing possible, right? But that way, all of the members can get targeted emails from me, and then I can, like, it does all of the client relationship for you. So now I can talk to like 100 people and have the same relationship where I would have had to do it one by one before. Mass production relationships. And it's great because I see everyone's names and I'm like, yeah, I know all these people. I love them all. They're all beautiful. And then just send it off. And I mean it to each one of you. And it's great because it's instead of sending it to 100 people, I'm sending it once to one person 100 times. I heard that from a Jewish rabbi years ago. Hello, I'm just going to video the fruit again because I want to eat. Excuse me. And why are we not flipping? There we go. Hey. These strawberries are wonderful. So, let's talk. And thank you very much to my Patreon member who also went through YouTube and liked many of the videos. So thank you very much for that. So that's the first thing we're going to discuss. The strawberries do look good and they taste even better. All right, so let's talk about Civ Shift. And now that all of the interesting people have, they've come in, peaked, and they've left, which is good. So Civ Shift. And what's interesting about the Pareto distribution, as I said, is that now that we have around 250 followers and the square root of that is, I don't know, 15.5 or something. Anyway, yeah, so, sorry, I lost myself for there. Anywho, what's interesting is that humans follow exactly that course. I've said that before, but it's so important that humans follow mathematical laws, not mathematical laws follow humans. Can technology change that? I don't think technology will change that because the enemy will have it too. So that's what happened. So, for example, when after the Romans stupidly after the Roman Empire collapsed and they turned into the Papal States, which were now a combination. This is Civ Shift, by the way. The Papal States were no longer Latin; they were Latin/German. So the Germans took over, if you want to look at it that way. And anyway, so what happened was they did not like the Eastern Roman Empire, stupidly. So the Eastern Roman Empire, of course, was getting crushed by the fact that the Romans were not helping them, and in fact they were killing each other. Anyway, eventually, when the Eastern Roman Empire collapsed, no thanks to all thanks to the Romans, to the ex-Romans, so the Roman/Germanic new peoples, the Franks and the Italians and all these people. The West now could no longer trade with China, and could no longer travel and get their spices, and their economy was dying. And this is the problem. This story is very powerful that I'm going to tell you, because this story incorporates left, right, and how that causes the dissolution of a state, civilizational shift, and it also talks about isolationism and how that actually kills you in the end. So all of this is amazing. So Western Europe, right, fell with the Roman Empire, and then there was a Civ Shift. In other words, Latin and Celtic had their genetics mixed with the Germanic tribes coming in from the north. So if we were back then in the Roman Empire, we'd be saying our civilization's gone, these German barbarians are coming in, our life is over. And in fact, you'd be correct. No, it's a number I've come up with. It's a number I've come up with, and so take it as meaningless. Yeah. And what I'm going to do with my Patreon guys, oh, that's the other thing I forgot to mention. My Patreon guys, you can ask me questions that I'm going to give in my second live autism speech, if you don't mind. And this is a way of screening out, because now there are all these beautiful followers, and I love you all. It's just too many questions. It's going to be like a million questions. So I'm like, I'll stick with my Patreon members at the moment. And of course, there are some exceptions, like the Inner Circle, who were with me from the beginning. So you guys can ask me questions that I will put in the second live autism speech on the 14th of July, midnight. I'll think about it. Okay. Yeah. So civilizational shift. So I'm going to tell you this story, and I'm going to break it down. So the story is very short. The story is that Christopher Columbus discovered America, right? Now, I know everyone's going to start making comments, and they're going to say, oh, he didn't discover America, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't him. He sold it. Someone else discovered it. He bought it off them. I mean, yeah, we're going to go through all of that, right? Trigger! All right, excuse me, I just had to put the fruit inside for my brother. I don't want it to go off in the sun. All right, so as we were saying, let us go back and sit in the beautiful sun while we talk. I'm just going to take off my jacket because it is actually really hot. Excuse me for a moment. I'll just show you the weather while I take off my jacket. Isn't that pretty? It's so pretty. Excuse me. Ugh, that's better. Alrighty. Oh, by the way, that's my tattoo. Jibra'il in Arabic. It's the angel Gabriel. not to be confused with Jibril, which was the Islamicized version of Gabriel, the angel that came to Muhammad. So clearly there was a bit of lost in translation there. Anywho, so the short story is Christopher Columbus discovered America. That's not really, obviously, that's not what happened. And I'm gonna, what age did you do the tat? I had a fake one for 2 years so that my parents would warm up to it, and then at about 23 I made it real, and they didn't even know for 6 months. But I forgot to tell them, and then I told them. So the problem was, right, and this is where you got to look at things four-dimensionally, and you have the blowback. 4 dimensions and blowback, and that's what humans are unable to see. Why are they unable to see? Well, because just like all other animals, we have a horizon of vision. You did it whole, you were Muslim. Damn straight I did. You had mine for 2 years. Yeah, of course. Yeah. No one needs to know. Only you guys on Periscope. Oh, it's beautiful. Getting a lovely, lovely winter tan right now. All right. So without losing my... I'll try and hold on to my thought for more than a millisecond. I'll do my best. So humans, like all animals, have a horizon, right? Now, for me, maybe it's the savantism, the autism, everything else that's happened, thank you. All of that stuff together maybe gives me more of a horizon than mathematics. I don't know. And maybe only in some respects. So in the 4D world of history and politics, maybe I have an edge, maybe. I don't know. And in most other things, I don't. So in social skills, I saw some of your scopes today, by the way. And you are beautiful people. God, I love it. Love it. Pro West, man. The shirts are coming out soon. Thanks to Parent Dome. All right. So Columbus, as we were saying. All right, what is the point of my discussion? Point of my discussion is that when we look at other animals, we can see that their view is limited, but we can't see that our own view is limited. So my goal is to try and expand our vision through these conversations. All right, so let's look at 4D and blowback. Why did Christopher Columbus discover America? Well, let's go a step back and a step back and a step back, and we're going to keep going back. And I'm going to start it. You can start it from anywhere. You can start it from the Big Bang if you wanted to, but I'm going to start it from the Civ shift and the collapse of the Roman Empire. Collapse of the Roman Empire with loss of values, okay, and there are an infinite amount of reasons, but we're going to stick with loss of values because that's the one that we identify with now, because that's what's happening in the West. And the loss of values allowed the barbarian Germans, the Germanic tribes, to eventually just walk in. And in fact, Rome had decayed to such a point that the Germanic tribes were welcomed by a lot of the liberals, let's just say, in ancient Rome. Now, they had the same fears that a lot of people here do. Right, and I used to have these fears. Now I don't know. Now I now realize Santa Claus doesn't exist, right? But the fears are, oh no, we're going to lose our Roman tradition. We're going to lose our engineering skills. We're going to lose all of this, and we're going to lose them to the barbarian Germans. They're going to mate with us, and we're going to lose our genetics and our heritage. And the funny thing is, they were right, because when we look back at the Roman Empire, right, we obviously look back at it from a skewed perspective, being that from current Europe, right? And current Europe is actually made up of a lot of Germanic people. So France, of course, is a mix of the Franks and the Celts, right? And that's why it's called France, but it used to be Gaul, as people know, when it was just all Celtic. So just like Lebanon used to be Maronites, right? And Christians, now it's not. And that's what we call a civ shift, a civilizational shift, right? The reason that we don't worry about it is because all the people who were worried are now dead. And it's the same with us, right? So in 100 years, when France is 70% Muslim, right, we're not going to care. And the people alive are not going to care, because they're going to be the Muslims who are looking back at history. And they're going to have a history of, this was France before, when it was all still, the white, Germanic people. But it turns out before the Germanic people, they were Celtic. Wow. So people get raped and pillaged and mixed down the line. Now that is a scary thought for us, but we'll be dead. So that's one thing. All right, but this is not good or bad, but I'm not endorsing this, just to make sure you don't realize I'm not actually endorsing this. I'm just talking data and what I see, and we can deal with it either way, but it's good to be informed and have a horizon. So the Romans, the new Romans, I'm calling them the new Romans. It was the Papal States, but I'm going to call them the new Romans. So the new Romans, Romans 2.0, were now the Germanic people. And what the Germanics did was, when they came in, they learnt a lot of the stuff from the Romans, all their technology, and they actually took on their religion. So they became Christian, as opposed to the other way around, right? So we have the New Rome. Now the New Rome, right, here is a problem. The New Rome now being this new Germanic, whiter version, right? New, harder, heavy-duty version. They and the East, which was the Greek section of the Roman Empire, were now schisming. And in fact, I think it was 1054 when they schismed officially. But that schism, right, became the old left and right. So here is now the new moral that you can get from that, which is how the left and right fighting each other leads to the death of both. All right, and this happens throughout history everywhere. Happened in Spain, happened in Saudi Arabia before it became Islamized. Happened in Lebanon. Happened in Syria. So it happens. It happened in Sudan. Happened in Sudan. Now Sudan split in half. Literally, actually, officially split in half. It came into Rome as soldiers, didn't they? Well, they came in, but they walked in. Most of the people were begging for them at that point because Rome had collapsed into beggary and disgust and decadence, sort of like what Western society is, what's happening to Western society now. And what happens is that isolationism actually increases that decline. So when you are unable to trade as well, like Mosul, yeah, when you're unable to trade, you actually decline. And in fact, just to go back even further, I'm going to go back 20,000 years now, just quickly. I'm going to go back in time 20,000 years to the Neanderthals. Why did the Neanderthals lose to the Europeans? So once again, the Neanderthals were the Europeans, and now they're wiped out. So there's a ways of people that come and get wiped out. We're now in that phase now. We as Europeans, right, are in a phase where we're now getting wiped out, right? So why did the Neanderthals get wiped out? It wasn't because there were bigotry or whatever, all these stupid terms that people want to invent. It was because one major reason, right? And this is what anthropologists say. Yeah, that's true. One interesting thing about the Neanderthals is that they were isolationists. They did not trade amongst tribes. Didn't they have two popes? Yes, they had two popes. They still do. When Islam gets as grip, yeah, it will. People get desperate. Desperate times, they'll side with anyone. Anyway, good question. I'm going to start doing Patreon scopes too, because then all my members can ask me questions, and then I'll release it later onto YouTube and Periscope. And so that way I can at least answer all my Patreon guests at least. All right, so the Neanderthals died because they did not trade, whereas the Europeans traded. In fact, there is evidence of the new Europeans, I'm going to call them the new Europeans, which was us, Homo sapiens, when we came into Europe after the Ice Age. When things warmed up, we moved up basically from the Middle East and from southern Spain and took over Europe, right? And actually my mother's side genetically is Celtic, so it turns out that my mother's side and the Celtics 10,000 years ago were one and the same people. We both originated in modern day Spain, because Spain was a lot colder before the global warming started 20,000 years ago. Anyway, so they moved up into Europe, and all they did was out-trade. They out-traded the Neanderthals. So therefore trade is what keeps humans alive, right? So isolationism kills us, and we literally kills us. Isolationism killed the Neanderthals. Okay, so that I've just jumped back 20,000 years. Now I'm going to come back forward again, right? So we're going across 4 dimensions, as this is the whole point of my scopes, right? So we come back to the blindness of the New Romans. Remember the New Romans, the half Germanic, half Celtic people? So New Rome obviously ended up having a schism with Greece, right? Which was now the old Roman Empire. So the old Roman Empire was like, gangstified, the old tradition, like, ancient scripts. Aramaic was Syriac, the language I'm learning, that was their top language, and ancient Greek, and, men were men, and, all that type of old school stuff, right? So they ended up having arguments with the New Romans, right? And those arguments became deadly. There were mass killings on both sides, 100,000 here, 85,000 here, 35,000 here. And slowly but surely, do I know Aramaic? Yes, I do. I actually studied it yesterday. Not new Aramaic, old Aramaic, Syriac, Jesus' dialect. Anyway, so the Greeks, what happened was with the schism, we had another sieve shift. So we had a lot of Latins, right, living in the east side. So it's almost like, imagine having, lots of conservatives living in California, but then they start killing, the liberals start killing the conservatives, so the conservatives move to the next whatever it's called, Wyoming or whatever, thing is next door. And so California becomes completely fake leftist, and Wyoming becomes completely conservative, let's just say, right? And that's what happened in Europe. So you had a split where you had the papal states, being liberal, but liberal in their liberal. In our times, they'd be ultra right wing, but relative to Greece, they were now liberal. So the point is that the left and right is relative, and that's where the fights begin. So they started mass killing. We had the Civ shift. So the end of Latin Greece was between 1054 and about 1300 roughly, right? So the Latins slowly, because of the murder, started shifting back, and the Greeks all in the other side moved across to the right, and that's when we had our schism, right? And then we had an ethnic shift, we had the civilizational shift, and we had lack of trading. Lack of trading, here we are again, back to lack of trading. So what did lack of trading do? It weakened the Papal States, the New Rome, and it weakened the Greek-Roman Empire. Now, what was the cause of action? Well, Christopher Columbus thought, well, if the world is round, then maybe I can trade with India without having to pass through the Arab territories, because by now Islam had now taken over the Middle East. So they could no longer pass through and trade with the Indians. So how Christopher Columbus is like, well, if the world is round, I'm going to go backwards, and I reckon I'll get to India, right? So that was his thing. Now, by accident, he hit the US, but that is what saved Europe, because that was called the New World, right? So Western Europe got lucky. Western Europe got lucky because all of a sudden, what happened to them? They could, starts with T, they could trade. They could trade. Western Europe could trade. So it's sort of actually not really fair, because the Greek Empire was actually more the traditional one. But because of their inability to trade, they were stuck in between the New Rome. Don't tax my tea. They were stuck between the New Rome and they were stuck between the Arabs. So the Greek Empire got screwed because they had nowhere to trade. Where were they going to go? Right? On one side, we had the liberal Rome, the New Rome, that hated each other. On the other side, they had the Arabs and the Persians that they were fighting against. In fact, they were paying Arabs to fight the Persians at one point. But I don't want to complicate things. So that's why the Greeks, through lack of trading, just like they were doomed to suffer the same fate as the Neanderthals. So here we are, civilizational shift, the end of Greece. Now Greece was Turkey. Turkey was Greece. All of that was Greece, right? So you've got to remember that. Imagine back then, right? People like us are sitting then in modern day Turkey, which was Greece, and saying, oh my God, we're going to lose Turkey to the Muslims. They're going to come and take us over. What can we do about it? We try to tell the new Romans, but those fake leftists don't care. You know, I'm obviously changing the vocab and the language. But does anyone actually see the parallel in what I'm saying? Do they see all of these parallels in this unbelievably powerful story? I want to see if anyone's seeing these parallels here. I think Miss Kasha is. Yeah, you're seeing the parallels, yeah. So now we call Turkey Turkey because we weren't born then. And the people who called it Greece are now dead. You jumped in late. So my point is that now no one complains about Turkey in general. I mean, obviously, like you saw my scope last night when Turkey has now taken all of the Christian churches, the oldest Christian churches in the world, right? These are my ancestors, by the way. Like before we became Lebanese, we were Syriacs, you know, the original guys. And now the oldest churches in the world, we're talking nearly 2,000 years old, right? Pride Parade was banned, yeah. Well, that's why you need liberals, right? That's why we have to unite. Anyway, but I don't want to get to that at the moment. So the point is that Turkey has now made them the property of the state, right? The oldest churches in the world, right? And what are we doing about it? Nothing. But all of the Greeks that were alive at the time, right? They would have massacred them, right? So that's the point. The point is that once we die, then it just shifts. So just like Turkey was Greece and now it's Turkey, France used to be Gaul and now it's France. Well, it's going to go from Gaul to France to, I don't know, like Francistan. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I'm actually dead serious about that. And I don't support or unsupport or dissupport. All empires fall. Yeah, that's right. But the reason is, now we're looking at why. What are the major things across all these empires that we are now seeing in today? And is it possible to reverse that trend? So, as I said, what we saw, and that's the story. So the story, that short story of Columbus discovering America, just waiting. Yeah. Christopher Columbus discovering the New World, America. That short story actually represents everything that we're talking about and all of our problems in the West. What did I tell you? I said people are going to say he didn't discover it. No, that's exactly right. Some of my Maronite ancestors went to America before white people did. And the Aboriginals got there before the Native Americans as well, but I've done a scope on that. By the way, all my past scopes, for some reason, are behind some sort of firewall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload them all to Patreon, so my Patreon members can view them anytime. And I had the same problem with SoundCloud. So SoundCloud is only putting some of my stuff, and I'm still getting massive downloads. In fact, I got so many downloads on SoundCloud that they had to freeze my account because there were just too many people and too much music getting downloaded. So what I've done is I'm gonna put them on Patreon as well. And like I said, I made the membership $1 a month, right? And because I as you know, I don't give a shit about the money. It's more to track everyone. But it seems now the Westerners are willfully enabling invasion, not because of bad. Well, yeah, and without getting into that, I'm gonna stick strictly as I can to Civ Shift, and to let you know what happens in the future so that you can see it. And now that you know the future, now that we've expanded your horizon, then you can decide what to do, because now you have eagle vision, right? We're sort of doing politics with eagle vision. So you can see, you know, 20 times as far as a regular human, right? These eagles. So that's what we're doing. So as I said, the Neanderthals died because they didn't trade. So that's a good argument for the liberal side. Trade keeps humans alive. The future is effing scary. Not really. If you accept that you're going to die and the history of the world will be written in Chinese, then it's not too bad. If I were thinking ahead, maybe if I had kids, I might want to consider moving them to China or maybe India. I don't know, because you got to ride the wave. Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Look now, Latin. What happened to Latin? Latin's dead, right? And Latin died before it actually died, because what happened was written Latin is not what written Latin is not what we see in all of the Romance languages, like in Romanian, in Spanish, in Italian, in French, in Catalan, in Portuguese, in all of these Romance languages are not actually from Latin. They're from Vulgar Latin. That's the future. It's not the future everywhere, because what we see is that the West moves. So we know that the West, for example, started in Mesopotamia, right? Great, just great. Well, look, Romans died, and now we talk about them in English. What's the difference, right? What's the difference between that and what I'm saying, right? And like I said, I'm not defending, I'm not attacking. I'm just trying to be like looking at the whole spectrum and getting some perspective, right? If you put yourself in the Romans' position and where you are now defending, it's depressing again. Yeah, so for example, Denmark, right? Now, Denmark had Germanic tribes. Now Denmark is a mix, right? So, and if you go further down, you have Italy that was Latin and now is Germanic. Half of Italy is Germanic. But at the same time, it actually, civilizational shift, what we look at as Europe didn't exist. We know that. We had Prussia. Who remembers Prussia? Who remembers the Austro-Hungarian Empire? Yeah, you had the Visigoths. The Visigoths were actually expelled at the end of the Spanish Muslim Empire. The Visigoths became Muslim and went into North Africa. I'm 68, so I know I'll be gone. Blessing, really. Yeah. So, we have two parallel universes happening simultaneously, right? We have our short-term lifespan, where we think of things as France and Spain and English and Arabic and Islam. But then you have the four-dimensional long-term trend, which is where languages become part of language families. And you see the Burians became Muslim, so it wasn't mainly an ethics change. Christian. Ethnic change. Oops. Yeah, no, the barbarians became Christian in Western Europe, and they actually infected their genetics into Western Europe. So instead of being Celtic, they're now a mix of Celt and Germanic. But what's interesting is that France was a backwards country until it became France. So after Gaul became France and the Germans mixed their blood with the French, that's when French became like a superpower. They adopted the culture. Well, not exactly, right? They didn't exactly adopt the culture, because they rearranged Christianity. So for example, the first Christians in France were not Trinitarian Christians, they were Arian Christians. And they didn't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. They believed he was the prophet of God, in the same way that the Gnostic Christians in the Middle East did before Gnostic Christianity was converted into Islam. Yeah. So that's the story. The story is trade. Without trade, we die. Western Europe should have died in the 1500s, but it was saved by the New World being America. Yeah, languages die. That's what happens. All languages die. They are born and then they die. right? So Lebanese, for example, Lebanese and Egyptian and Moroccan, all of these are languages that haven't yet been born. They're all fetuses, right? Once Islam ends, in whether it's 100 years or 1,000 years or 2,000 years, whenever it is that Islam dies, in the same way Christianity did, right? Officially, I mean, there are still Christians, but Christian will take over, English will take over. Well, not necessarily, because English itself is mutating, right? And or Arabic. Well, once again, Arabic is dying. So the original Arabic is already dead. No one actually can speak it fluently, really. Latin and Hebrew would have died completely. That's exactly right. It's actually, what happens is that the original language, it's like the mother language gives birth to its baby languages, right? But then the mother has to die for the new languages to become officially born. So that's how languages have worked throughout history, right? So Vulgar Latin was a street Latin, right? It was like, like written Latin was completely different to spoken Latin. Hey, Sprinkles. So the spoken Latin, right, became Vulgar Latin. And then those dialects were what were the unofficial Latins around Europe. So Spanish, and even Spain had like 100 different dialects, and so did Italy. Will internet change this? It has, because that's why we can understand each other. Otherwise, English would have mutated rapidly, very differently, right? Will be a majority language. Well, once again, when languages get too big, they collapse, just like empires. When they get too big, they collapse, because then you have different people speaking different dialects of the language. And when the reason for, see, the thing about a language is that it's part of identity. And when the identity dies, so does the language. So when Rome fell, so did Latin, right? And what happened was all of these dialects then slowly became new languages. They were born. So the Spanish dialect or the Castilian dialect of Latin became Spanish, because the Castilians, obviously, that became an official language for them. The priests and that wrote that language down, so it becomes an official language when before it was just a dialect. And then they took over all of Spain. So then all of Spain spoke Castilian, and that's how all of the other accents in Spain and dialects got destroyed, right? So there's a few exceptions. There's people like the Basque. The Basque and the Pyrenees are the original Europeans. The Basque were in Europe. They were the first Homo sapiens in Europe. They're the ones who basically wiped out the Neanderthals. And their language and the Hungarians have the original Indo-European languages. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And now, for example, you have Portuguese. Brazilian Portuguese is now more popular than original Portuguese. So original Portuguese is like almost a dead language, because basically Portugal is almost a dead country. You have Basque lineage, very cool. They live in one of the most beautiful parts of the world. But once again, you have to remember that the Basque had all of that territory. Okay, I'm going to end with this, and then I'm going to go. And don't forget, Patreon, become members, and we'll talk in more detail on Patreon. And I can actually answer your questions. And it's only $1 a month at Gabsmacked, right? So, like I said, it's not about the money. It's to actually bring the people who are passionate about this together. And then Periscope is beautiful for the masses, right? Because I love you all, right? But obviously, as a human, we're limited in how many people we can talk to at once. So that's the issue. So Patreon.com/Gabsmacked, man. And thank you already to Jennifer, I think, our first member. Kevro joined. All right, so let's talk about the Basque very quickly. I'm going to end on the Basque. The Basque really have a right to complain more than anyone else, right? Because the Basque, first of all, were taken over by the Celts. And then they were taken over by the Germans. And then they were taken over now by every single other empire that came through. And then they were taken over by every single goddamn empire. And so 99% of the Basque have been wiped out. Now, who remains? The most hardcore, crazy... Thank you. Thank you, man. I love you coming on, Kevro. I love your little photo with your smile, and it's always good to see you. So, the Basque... Why is it that the Basque are the most hard-ass and the Hungarians are the most hard-ass of all of Europe, right? The Hungarians, right, they said they're only taking in white refugees, right? The balls on Hungary, right? It's funny because they, like, half my family is as dark as the night sky, right? So half of my family wouldn't be allowed in, but it's really funny. So this is another thing in 4 dimensions that you have to see. When a certain culture and identity starts to get wiped out, the ones that remain are the hard-ass ones, and that's evolution. So in Lebanon, the only Christians that remain are the most psycho, gun-wielding, Bible-thumping, maniac Christians, right? And the same, and I mean that, I don't mean that in a bad way, because my mum's village is all like that. Right? They're all like weaponized to the hilt, right? Like the Scots. Like the Scots. In fact, my mother's village and the Scots have the same genetics. They both are Celtic origin. So the most crazy Christians in Lebanon are Celtic from 10,000 years ago. And for some reason, instead of going up into Europe, they went into Lebanon, which is the Alps. Lebanon is the end of the Alps, basically. So it's all mountainous and snowing. So maybe that's why. Yeah, and they all are white, right? My mum's side of the family are basically blonde, white. My mum has red hair and green eyes. And they're all basically what you want to call pure. They did not mix with Arabs at all. Yeah. And even their Lebanese dialect sounds like Scottish. It's like, hello, how are you, my lady? They talk like that, but in Lebanese, like, marhaba kifak ya lady? So they're fucking nuts, man. Like, but all the other Christians all got wiped out. So basically, all my dad's side, right, basically were all liberals, and I think that's where I get the liberal temperament from. And they all got wiped out. So the same with the Basque, right? And so the more you wipe out a culture, only the hard ass remain. So the Scots, the Basque, you know them in America. Like your right-wing Republicans, ironically, will probably be the ones who survive when America becomes Islamized. And then there'll be little pockets all over the world, and then all of us will sort of try and connect with each other somehow. But we'll all be being persecuted, you know, just like now in Lebanon, Christians are now persecuted constantly. They don't get jobs over Muslims. Muslims get jobs over Christians, you know. Druze get jobs over non-Druze. In Egypt, Coptics don't get jobs unless they're unbelievably, exceptionally successful, and then they'll get a job, or their boss is a Coptic Christian. Turkey, they took the churches yesterday, remember? So, like, ideally, you know, what I would love to do is actually, it would be great if there was an actual army who cared about the people, who went in and sided with the Kurds and then just wiped out part of Turkey and gave it back to Greece. Lebanon was extremely liberal, yeah. Are you saying Druze? Druze, yeah, sorry, Druze, D-R-U-Z-E. They are an offshoot of the Shia Islam sect, but they are basically heretics, but they were protected by the Turkish Empire because they hated the Christians, so it was enemy of my enemy. Civil war, which the Muslims will win. It won't be the Muslims that will win. It will be the leftists and Muslims together that will win. And the reason they will win, as far as I prognosticate, is that everyone else doesn't really like violence because they don't have an agenda. Except for the most right-wing Nazi-style, what you call Christians. They're not really Christians. They're like psychopaths on like the skinheads, right? What will happen is that the regular Christians or secular people will side with them temporarily because they have nowhere else to go, right? It's sort of like siding with Russia because you have nowhere else to go, right? Yeah, it's funny because the actual maniac Americans will be the ones that protect Kevro and me, right? They'll actually protect liberals, right? That's the funny thing about them. They're like, I'll protect you, son, but man, don't shove that gay shit in my face. Leftists will agree to abolish democracy. Yes, absolutely. Leftists don't want democracy. They never did. They never wanted democracy, ever. They hate democracy. They hate the West. They hate everything the West stands for. The fake leftists. They don't want freedom. They use freedom of speech because they know that conservatives and normal liberals are really innocent and we believe what people say. But that is not what they want. They never wanted that, never. Even when they were fighting for gay rights, which was a beautiful thing, that want leftists dead. That's right. And they'll keep wanting them dead the more that fake leftists keep perpetuating this disgusting agenda, right? So leftists like me and Kevro, who actually are true leftists, who want freedom and justice and liberty and equality, right? We're going to get screwed because the right can't tell the difference between us and the fake left. And that's sort of our fault because we don't punch down. The left are commies at heart. I would say the fake left are definitely commies. I'm absolutely against communism in all its forms. It resulted in them. It made fascism. The right doesn't want the left dead. Yeah. But that is a narrative on the left, right? And that is fear-mongering that's perpetuated by the fake left. And beautiful people like Kevro, right? And Kevro, like, you know, I mean, most of you are going to get the shits, but Kevro and I probably agree on 99% of things politically, right? But the difference is that I'm sort of outside the country, so I don't have to get as emotional about it. Both are awful. I would submit the fake right doesn't exist yet. They will exist. The warning that the fake right is coming is Tommy Robertson. Tommy Robertson is what we on the left think is extreme right, but because I lived in Lebanon, that is not extreme right. They're starting. What the extreme right is, you haven't seen them yet. They haven't existed in the West since 1945, where they were wiped the F out, right? But in the Middle East, I saw them, right? And they will murder. They will murder. Like, if you can call them a bigot, it won't work. They'll just shoot you in the head. They don't care. And what they did in Lebanon was they actually took over part of the country, and they actually had borders where if you weren't Christian, they would kill you. Tommy Robinson is extreme. I don't think he's extreme at all, but he actually looks extreme to us. But the only reason I don't think he's extreme is because I've seen in Lebanon what real extremism is. No, okay. So what you define as extreme depends on where you are. So if I did not see the war in Lebanon and I grew up as a liberal in Australia, I would think Tommy Robinson is extremes. Yeah. No, he does actually look extreme to someone who's on the left. He actually does, right? But that's their mistake. And I don't blame them, because if I did not live in the Civil War, I would think Tommy Robinson is extreme, because Tommy Robinson types are the ones who bashed me and pissed on me and spat on me every day at school. So my memories want to hate them, right? But at the same time, I've seen what extremism is. So as I said, there was a guy in Lebanon who, what happened was, we had terrorism for 30 years. And it produced a Tommy Robinson type. And Tommy Robinson is just a guy who's concerned about his country, but he has a right-wing temperament. So he looks abrasive, he looks scary. You know, a lot of like crazy people support him, you know, in the mix. Am I Middle Eastern? Yes. I am Semitic Middle Eastern, yes. Anyway, right? So that's what happened first. But what happened was in Lebanon, okay, here is a really important point. I was supposed to finish with the Basque, but the really important point is this. The Tommy Robinsons of Lebanon, I hope so too. And I don't blame him personally at all. At all. I've heard his interviews, and he's the sweetest guy in the world. When he's not riled up, he's one of the sweetest guys you've ever seen. So I can say that, right? And as much as I want to hate people like that, I go against my own bias to say that. But anyway, I really had to stress this really important point, and please, I'm going to try not to get interrupted. Okay, I'm going to try. I forgot what the point was. Ah, damn it. Yes. He's passionate, he has foresight. No, don't be silly, it's not your fault. Something about Lebanon that was so important. Yes. So after 30 years of terrorist attacks in Lebanon against the Christian majority, right? We had a rise of the Tommy Robinson type, which is just a patriotic guy. I've never actually heard him say anything right wing. I actually haven't. The words are not right wing. His actions look right wing, and the people that support him look right wing, but his words are not actually bad. The words that I've heard, right? So that's the difference. I try to hear the words and not be offended by his look or whatever and all that stuff, right? But in Lebanon, what happened was we had guys who rose up. So there was a guy called Ghassan Thwani. So Ghassan, right, was Hitler right wing. Hitler was extreme right wing, yeah. He was right and left at the same time. He was actually Marxist and right wing at the same time, which made him twice as deadly. Sorry about this. Oh man, I have to go. Anyway, what happened to those guys? So the Tommy Robinson guys in Lebanon, right? They got murdered. All of them. All of them got murdered, right? They got too big and they got murdered, right? So now the point, that is not the point, right? So what happened? The point of what I'm going to say is what happened after they got murdered. Not exactly, but that's another lecture. I would say to you, type in Hitler and Jordan Peterson, you'll get a. The point is not that they killed the Lebanese Tommy Robinsons. What happened was what came after that. And that is what the fake left does not see. And that's what even people on the right do not see. What comes after Tommy Robinson gets killed is something you will pray to God you have never seen. And I've seen it. And I promise you, that's the fake right. Those are the mass murderers who will kill their own people. So the fake left kills its own leftists. So fake leftists hate me, right? But I'm a true leftist, right? Now, the fake right have not yet been born. You haven't seen them. You have not seen the fake right. I've seen these people. These people will pull out children from under a bed and shoot them in the head because they're going to grow up to become a Muslim, or they're going to grow up to become a fake leftist Christian, right? That's the right. And my message really is to Kevro. Kevro, my brother, if you're still here, right? They're the people I fear. And that's why I talk to conservatives. That's right. And any left person who blames the right, you do not know what demons you are calling forth. And that is my warning to my brothers and sisters on the left. Be fucking careful. Because if someone kills Tommy Robinson, if someone kills Donald Trump, what will come after that, right? You will wish to Christ you are not alive in those times. And I told you I was 6 and I saw a guy shoot another guy in the neck because he wasn't Christian enough, right? What they do is they'll hijack a whole suburb. The Italian and German fascists. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. They will start taking out Muslims. In fact, they've already started in the UK. There's now been 2 mass killings against Muslims. This is why us together must talk to each other. Yes, we don't agree on religion. Yes, we don't agree on abortion. Yes, we don't agree on homosexuality. Yes, we don't agree on God knows on healthcare. You know, Kevro and I probably agree on every single thing. But what's the point? What's the point? We need to band together. Exactly. So I say to Kevro, my brother, right? When we bag out Donald Trump, I bag him out for fun, right? But I don't hate Donald Trump at all, because Donald Trump has saved us from what would have come. Do you know if Ted Cruz became elected, right? What would have happened? The people that would have pushed us further and further to the right, right? And Ted Cruz, right? He would have patrolled mosques, right? I guarantee you, Ted Cruz would have patrolled mosques, man. That guy is insane. And you can like Ted Cruz, like Red Cruz, gross and creepy, yeah. So, and I'm not attacking Ted Cruz personally. I'm saying that's 1 inch closer. But so I'll tell you an example. See, now let's not bag at Ted Cruz, because that's exactly what I'm trying not to do. I'm sorry, I really didn't explain that properly. The point is, be careful what you bag out, because what we as humans don't see is what's behind what we're bagging out. So in Lebanon, what happened was they massacred Pierre Goumayel. 2 days after Pierre Goumayel was massacred, Pierre Goumayel was Tommy Robinson, right? What happened 2 days after he was massacred? What happened? What did the right-wing guys in his party do? He set up a party called the Lebanese Defense League. That's not the name, but because like in English Defense League, he set one up called Lebanese Defense League. It was a different name, but the equivalent, right? So he sets up the Lebanese Defense League, and he allies with Israel. I live in Australia. And he becomes the warning about Islam. And he actually reached out to Muslims and said, Muslims, you need to side with me, because I want peace for everybody, and what's coming after me is worse, right? Now, no one listened, and they killed him. 2 days after he was assassinated, in September 14th, 1982, what happened? What happened 2 days? 2 days after he was assassinated, what did his loyal supporters do? In revenge. Sorry, Bashir Goumayel, thank you. I said Pierre. Pierre is Bashir's nephew. Pierre was assassinated as well. Sorry. Sabra and Shatila. All right, what did they do? In revenge for the murder of the Lebanese Tommy Robinson, the LDL murdered in one night, 6,000 Muslims. 6,000 Muslims in one night. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the fake right. That wasn't the end. That was the beginning. Yeah. So who created them? Who brought them to power? The people that assassinated the Tommy Robinson. Why did Tommy Robinson come to power? Because the fake left wants to call all Muslim peaceful. There is your problem. Let's have a discussion. If someone says all Muslims are peaceful, or Islam is all peace, you're going to give birth to the nationalist who says all Islam is evil. This is the problem. It requires brain power to go against your own natural bias and realize that there is good and bad everywhere. And we need to divide the enemy, not the enemy divide us. All right? We need to divide the enemy, not the enemy divide us. Hashtag divide the enemy. Hashtag divide the enemy. Hashtag pro-West. It's not even nationalism versus globalism. Critical thinking is good. Hashtag divide the enemy. All right? Hashtag divide the enemy and hashtag pro-West. All right? Now do me a favor, everyone, if you can somehow, I don't know, some people have the technology. What I'm gonna do, Liran, I am really tired and I've got to go to work, so I can't answer your question. But you are one of my most amazing supporters, so I will answer you. I might even do a scope later, or if you DM me, I'll do a scope just on that topic for you because you're awesome. All right, guys. Hashtag divide the enemy and hashtag pro West. Don't forget that stuff. Do not forget it. Most people will forget it in 5 minutes. Do not forget it. Love you all, man. Love you all. Peace out.